stuns the world with a single photo, what is really behind his silence? Hello fans. When silence makes the loudest sound. In a world where noise is constant. Where opinions echo louder than truths. Where filters often blur reality. What happens when someone says nothing, and yet the world listens? What happens when a single photograph, unaccompanied by explanation, promotion, or context, pierces through the fog of overstimulation, and the world, for once, becomes quiet? This is not the story of just any celebrity. This is the unfolding of an unexpected moment from Kim Taehyung, the artist known as V from the global phenomenon, BTS. One photo. No words. Just a presence. And with it, he managed to shift the emotional atmosphere of the entire world. The photo that felt like a whisper to the soul. It was just past midnight in South Korea. The world was still turning. People were scrolling mindlessly, lulled by the hypnotic flicker of their screens. Then, a photo appeared. Taehyung, standing alone, in the middle of what looked like a dusty path. The backdrop, a sky painted in muted grays, like an old oil painting left outside in the rain. He wore a loose, white shirt, untucked. Plain linen trousers. Shoes worn from many walks. There were no logos. No stylists. No dramatic poses. No filters. No caption, except for a single emoji, dove. And in that instant, time seemed to pause. The silence behind the image was louder than any beat drop. It was not just a photo. It was a feeling. The reaction, global, raw, unprepared. Within 7 minutes, the post had over 1 million likes. Within 1 hour, trending in 42 countries. Within 24 hours, it had sparked discussions across social platforms, media outlets, and academic forums. And the reactions. Some fans cried. Others meditated. Artists created. Poets wrote. Philosophers debated. A fan from Brazil commented. It feels like he's telling me it's okay to feel, just feel. Another from Turkey wrote. He said nothing, and yet my heart screamed. What was it about this one image that felt like both a mirror and a doorway? A silent masterpiece, the art of Taehyung. To understand the weight of that moment, we must first understand the man behind the frame. Taehyung is not a typical idol. He is a visual poet, a jazz lover, a soul who prefers the sound of wind over applause. He has always spoken more in silences than in interviews. His image, curated without effort, felt intentional in its rawness. Experts began to compare the photograph to cinematic styles reminiscent of Andrei Tarkovsky and Wim Wenders. Every detail, his stance, his gaze, the surrounding stillness, held symbolic weight. It wasn't fashion. It wasn't a teaser. It was something deeper. It was presence. Interpretation, when the world tried to understand. Was this the start of a new project? Was it a spiritual statement? A tribute to something lost? Theories flooded timelines. The dusty path equals a journey through solitude. The sky equals the blurred line between hope and despair. The worn-out shoes equals the cost of walking alone. The white shirt equals vulnerability. The dove emoji equals peace, surrender, or even mourning. Some speculated he had visited a war memorial. Others thought he had just returned from a monastery. Many believed it was the opening of a visual diary, a series of artistic messages in disguise. But none of it was confirmed. And maybe that was the point. A cultural shift, why this mattered more than a comeback. We live in an age where celebrities often overshare. Where attention is currency. Where content is pumped out faster than it can be consumed. But then came Taehyung. Saying nothing. Showing everything. And reminding the world that quiet still has value. Cultural critics wrote essays. Fashion houses paused to reflect on minimalism. Mental health advocates praise the emotional stillness. A psychology professor tweeted, "This photo is a masterclass in emotional containment and vulnerability. It demands to be felt." The ripple of that one image went far beyond fandom. It challenged the pace of modern media. The man behind the moment, a history of soulful mystery. Taehyung has always walked the line between global icon and invisible poet. He has described himself not as a celebrity, but as a traveler. One who seeks emotion, texture, memory, not performance. He's been seen sketching on napkins, writing diary entries on Polaroids, playing saxophone alone at 2 a.m. His artistry lives in subtlety. In the way he looks at shadows. In how he lets a silence stretch just long enough to say something unspoken. So when he posted that photo, it didn't feel like a PR move. It felt like a page torn from his private journal, shared not to impress, but to connect. Why the world was moved to tears. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't nostalgia. It was something harder to name. Stillness. The kind that reminds you of someone you miss. Of a home you forgot you longed for. Of a time before the noise took over. Taehyung's photo felt like a pause button on reality. And in that pause, we remembered what it felt like to just be. The gift of silence. Maybe the photo was never meant to be explained. Maybe it wasn't a message to decode. Maybe it was just a gift. A moment of emotional clarity in a world that rarely slows down. And maybe, just maybe, that's the true genius of Taehyung. He doesn't need to shout to be heard. He doesn't need to move to shake the world. He simply shows up. Fully. Quietly. Truly. A soft piano melody plays. No hashtags. No campaigns. Just a man. Standing in the wind. Letting the world feel again. There were no flashing signs. No loud announcements. No viral trends begging for attention. Just presence. Raw, unfiltered presence. Taehyung stood there, not as an idol, not as a global superstar, but as a human being. Open to the wind. Open to the silence. Open to the gaze of a world that had forgotten how to pause. And in that stillness, something shifted. The world didn't just see him. It felt him. A silent echo of warmth, nostalgia, and something more tender than words could capture. Thank you, Taehyung, for reminding us that beauty doesn't always arrive with noise. That strength can live in stillness. That sometimes the softest voices, the quiet glances, the gentle gestures, the wordless grace, are the ones that live forever. In hearts that never forget how to feel.